Hi, students. Today we're going to talk a little bit about analogies, and I have my conversation buddy here with me. You should have a conversation buddy available. That's going to be somebody or something that you're going to discuss when I say to pause and discuss something. You're going to tell your conversation buddy about it, and your conversation buddy is going to become super intelligent based on that conversation. So we're talking about analogies. Now, in school, we use very simple set analogies. So, for example, hot is to cold as up is to down. And these analogies are just very simple relationships between two words. The only time you really do analogies like that is when you're in school or, for example, when you're taking a test like the SAT or ACT test for college. Otherwise, we use analogies in a somewhat different way. In real life, what you do is you use a familiar situation or a familiar object to explain something that's more complicated. I'd like you to stop for a moment and see if you can remember or if you can guess what this particular conversation buddy can be used as an analogy for. So, did you remember or could you figure it out? So, this particular conversation buddy is a babushka doll. And a babushka doll has an outer doll, and then it has an inner doll, and then it has an inner doll, and then it has another inner doll, and so forth until you get to the tiny central core. So I have used this babushka doll as an analogy for the structure of atoms. So in other words, an atom starts off with a tiny little nucleus, which is the protons and the neutrons. And then there are what we call shells. And each shell contains a certain number of electrons. And when a shell is filled, that shell is now inside the babushka doll. And another shell comes along, and now that shell gets filled. And then so on and so forth until you've used up all of the electrons. And then when you take a look at the doll, you see that the only part you can really see and the only part you can really do something with is the outermost shell. So if I can put it back together the way it belongs, we can see that this is an analogy for an atom. So when we have a school analogy, what we need to do is we need to analyze it. We need to figure out what is the fourth word that goes with the third word, the same way the first word goes with the second word. So when you look at an analogy, for example, carte blanche goes to diplomat, the way that search warrant goes to what, the first thing you have to do is figure out what the words mean, because that's the first thing we do when we're looking at any text. We have to understand the words in order to understand the context and understand what is going on. So we would look the words up, or we would ask our mom or dad, or maybe ask our teacher if our teacher's there, and we would make sure we have a really good idea of what each one of the words means. So in this particular analogy, carte blanche is a French term that means a set of instructions. And the set of instructions basically says you can do whatever you want. So when we give carte blanche instructions to a diplomat, we're basically telling the diplomat to go ahead and act how they see fit. Do whatever they think is right. Don't wait until they talk to the government about, just take care of it. It's a very rare thing for a government to give carte blanche to a diplomat, but sometimes, especially if there's something like a war threatening, it becomes important for the diplomat to be able to work quickly and to do what they feel is right. So it's the job of the government to send the right diplomat over. So knowing that, we think, well, what kind of analogy is it? It is a set of directions, and then the person who is going to be carrying out those directions, or a set of instructions, and then the person who carries out the instructions. So then when we go and look at search warrant, and we look that up, we see that a search warrant is a set of instructions for a police officer to be able to go in and examine somebody's house, somebody's car, somebody's locker at school. So a search warrant gives a police officer instructions the same way that carte blanche gives a diplomat instructions. So in summary, when we see an analogy, first thing we do is make sure we understand the definition of the words. Then we will look at the relationship between the two words and try to put it into some kind of a category. For example, a mother animal and a baby animal. Directions that you can go in, up and down, opposites, synonyms. It's something getting bigger in size. For example, a dime goes to a quarter the same way that a $50 goes to a dollar. And then you want to make sure that you have set up your part of the analogy in exactly the same way as the first one was set up. If it's a set of instructions and a person who follows the instructions, the next part should be a set of instructions and a person who follows the instructions. And that's all there is to a school analogy. The models that we use for analogies in real life, like the babushka doll being an atom, that's for another video. Take care.